Hi, I'm Andrew McCrae. Welcome to our farm and ranch in northwest Missouri. My great-great-grandfather settled here in 1910, and I'm the fifth generation to grow crops and livestock here. As a farmer myself, I know the highs and lows of this life, the issues we confront every day, some new, some as old as farming itself. This show is a place to talk with farmers and others in the ag industry about topics that mean something to us, topics that can improve the present and future of our operations. This is Farming the Countryside.
Welcome to Farming the Countryside. Dalton Dilldine from Blytheville, Arkansas is my guest. And Dalton, I know that you have had some heavy weather in the last week or so. Is that right down there?
Yeah, we had some pretty strong storms, and thankfully we've weathered most of them. Hopefully we're going to make it through, and not have too much floating away. So
Right. Well, you are a recent award winner at the Top Producer Conference, and I wanted to talk with you about your operation a little bit. And for those that don't know, you've been around farming in a sense all your life, but at a
yes,
pretty early age, you were thrust into the leadership portion of this farm, correct?
that's correct. That's correct.
Yeah, talk
Um,
talk about that. Yeah.
so I graduated high school or senior year high school, and I had been farming. I started driving a tractor when I was 12. Would run a grain cart and kind of keep everything as far as harvest going. But anyways, uh, so I was 18 and my father unexpectedly passed away, and I kind of had to decide go to college or farm or whatever. And I kind of did both. I would go to college and come home, and my college was about an hour away. So anyways, we I would farm when I was off out of class or could get away and come back home. And um I've been doing that. Once I graduated, I came back to the farm full time, and really kind of took over. We had a guy that worked for us his whole life. This is his 51st year working for us. He kind of managed during all that time while I was away, but I've pretty well took over everything with the farm from time to time. I mean, major purchases, major leaps and bounds. It's still kind of it's a farm, a family. We talk about it and kind of decide, but day to day, almost every decision I'm leading up on. So, anyways, but we've went through a lot. We've had a lot of ups. We've had a lot of downs, but it's been rewarding.
A lot of folks listening to this may be younger and either wanting to get into farming or they may have the opportunity to take more of a leadership role. Speak to what it was like being young coming back into this. Certainly, you've been around it, but are there any things that you are glad you did or that you would change as you took on that leadership role to manage the operation?
Um, well, so kind of how I guess I would say I took over the farm. I had thankfully my dad was pretty well known in the farming community, and I had several contacts I was able to reach out to for questions. And I will say there was a lot of trial and error and cross your fingers, hoped it worked. And so I will say to somebody younger than me, you know, you can't always look at the dauntingness of it. Some things you've just got to kind of stick your neck out, and you know if you believe in it, mostly things will work out. Or you just got to be able to pivot, and if it doesn't work, try to make it work maybe another way, or whatever. But I would say things I would do different. I don't have just a whole lot that I necessarily would just do completely different. I I learned from my mistakes, and some of them I don't want to make again. But it was always it always seemed to work out. Um, I could always, if today was a bad day, you could always go home and at the end of the day, and you got to restart and try again. So there was a lot of that went on.
We haven't told folks yet about your farm. You may want to describe the operation and what you grow there. You've got some good fertile land in the Delta, correct?
Yeah, so we're in Northeast Arkansas. We grow cotton, soybeans, corn, rice, and some winter wheat, just depending on how the prices are and how things fall. So, but we're all row crop farm. Almost, I'm gonna say half to three quarter is either furrow irrigated or pivot irrigated. It's pretty well as flat as a board around here. So
with that crop mix, are you changing the number of acres you have based on the economics right now, or do you tend to stay relatively the same with the percentages of those crops?
so I try to rotate our land just for, try to improve the quality of the soil and, put back what we can. But, we're with furrow irrigation, we can move things and we can kind of grow what we want to. So there's a lot of rotation schedule on the land, but we can adjust for, if there's a better price, we can adjust for that, and plant a few more acres or certain things like that. So we're not, I guess, like a whole lot of Midwestern where you're gonna cotton or not cotton, corn and soybeans, year over year. We've got a little more flexibility.
Right, right. You purchased an old grain elevator, is that right, to help
That's
you
correct.
with marketing? Explain that.
So in 22, we bought we had some terrible basis due to the Mississippi River being historic lows. It got to the point that we would have lost $1.60 just to drive on the scales. So we're 30 miles from the river, so we always pull it straight out of the field and carry it to the river. And during that time, we saw such a loss, that I started making phone calls trying to find grain storage rentable, and everybody was in the same boat. A lot of farms, I would say, sent a good percentage straight to the river just to not have to handle it. And then with that going on, everybody said, well, we'll just hold all we can till we fill up. So there was no storage to rent. Um, anyways, and so I started making phone calls and found a retired, left, I don't know what you want to call it, neglected grain facility. And we went in it. I made some phone calls, and I think it was 7 days, 10 days, we were back to using it. It hadn't been turned on in, I think, 4 years. Before then, it had ran for 20 years. And it was before then, it had been a co-op per se. It was called Farmer Soybean. And anyways, we bought it, got some grain in it, got some relief that year, and the next year we went in and pretty well modernized it. We put grain sensors in the storage facility, kind of mechanized everything. We've got it all pretty well. I can run it all off a touch screen. It's almost 750,000 bushels of storage, and it was built in 1946. So it's pretty wild. It's actually so old that a guy I was talking to, he said that it was state of the art in 1945 because they were still riveting tanks together. So welding was new to weld tanks together. So it's kind of crazy that far back, it was state of the art then. So anyways, but it's been a huge relief. Just as far as efficiency on our farm, we can run as late as we want to run. We don't have to worry about the river. we can carry in the market. We can play the market game a whole lot more. It's been a huge advancement in our farm.
I'm interested right now with margins being tighter. Is that changing anything you're doing, whether it is cutting back on inputs or lessening the amount of equipment or trying to lessen up any debt? Or we have this conversation a lot with different folks about getting through a little bit leaner times, especially on this crop side.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard this before, and I feel like we are too. We had a few years of some relief, and kind of got back under our feet. From just being behind from years past, and now we're back to it again. We're trying to we conventional farm. There's not much no till and strip till. We're looking to that a little more. Just trying to see what we can get by with for this year. There's just we've tried to do a few little things, not just a whole lot. Just because we've kind of been lean for a few years around our area, I'll say. So I can't point my finger as to one, just this is what we're doing to cut cost. We're just trying to skim here and, well, that field's pretty well, flat. We think we can plan on it. There's just, we're trying to make fertilize, maybe stretch it a year, just because every year we try to maintain, a same amount of fertilize. So we're, some fields that we think there's enough to handle, we'll try to be a little lean there too. So
Part of your ground is rented, and a lot of folks are always trying to rent ground, and then if they haven't rented, worried about maybe keeping that ground or keeping it affordable. Anything you've learned on the rental side to have good relationships and keep that ground so that you can farm it in the future?
Yes, we have we try to keep up with our landlords. Thankfully we own quite a few acres, but we have about that many acres with landlords. We One thing we kind of do is, we try to inform them, okay, hey, we planted today. This is, you're taken care of. This is kind of what's going on. We just kind of keep them, you know, in the operation if they choose to. Some people don't, but we don't want them to feel like we don't care about them or don't, want to have their best interest. Um, I try not to. I don't want to be a farm that tries to pull ground from other farmers. So we just try to do as best a job as possible, with our landlords and try to have the best, relationship with them that we can have. It's been rewarding. They're confident in us, and that's a good thing.
The part of the country you are in, that ground I'm sure can be pretty valuable. Is it coming up for sale very often, or is it in pretty solid hands, so to speak, down there in the Delta?
So yes and no. Recently ground comes up for sale, but I will say a majority of the ground, if it comes up for sale, we don't hear about it till it's already sold. A lot of it is rented ground, and the farmers are just going to say, "Well, I'll just buy it." There's just not a lot that truly goes up for auction, and you know it's just a bid highest price kind of scenario. A lot of it is internal, and you don't hear about it till it's done.
Right. Your labor situation, I think people would be interested in. You have used H2A, I think, quite a bit, but talk about the
Yeah.
mix of labor you've got there.
So we've got 7 full time, 1 part time. Our part time guy is just during harvest mainly, just to help us get everything out of the field, and then from the bin to the river. We've also got 3 American workers, and they've been here 20. I think our shortest guy's 20 years. And then we've also having such trouble getting good help. We moved to using H2A work, and it's been a huge blessing on our farm. Just having good help, having good people. I've got a good crew of guys that care about their job, care about what they're doing, and that's a good thing to have on an operation. I'm trying to be as efficient as possible and not cut people out of our farm, but I just don't want to have an excessive amount of people. I want to have bigger equipment and less people, or just expand my acres to fit the role of the amount of people I have. So they've been great. All of them that we've had have come from a farming background, and it's really been nice. They do everything we need to have done, and I always tell them, I won't ask you to do anything I wouldn't do, but it may not always be the most fun. So, but they've been great.
Any certain location that most of them have come from?
So all of my guys come from South Africa, and they can speak perfect English. I mean, it's just like having another guy. Only they care to be here, and they care about what you're doing, and they try their hardest just like we do.
That program H2A, any differences as we moved from one presidential administration to another, or is it seem to be pretty stable right now, and you aren't worried about that pipeline at all?
So they have expressed some scarcity, but as far as our pipeline to get them approved and to do everything, we've not seen any change whatsoever. I think there may be some worry coming next year. They're talking about closing an embassy in South Africa, and I think that's going to cause some panic. But I don't. On our end, we haven't seen any change.
Right. Talk to you the equipment side for just a moment. How are you keeping up without breaking the bank in these days? Or is this the time in which you say, hey, let's make some trades because things have backed off a little bit, and maybe this is the time to go do something different on the equipment side?
So like I said, we are trying to do, the most we can with less equipment. I'll say it that way. I want to run as big of a piece of equipment as we can handle on our size operation. We went to a 46-foot field cultivator that we used to only run like 30s. And we've bought a quad track tractor that we've always just had front wheel assist tractors. So, I would love to gear more towards just large equipment and, do that kind of thing. But we have been looking, just trying to fit the scenario for, the upcoming future. But
right. Talk about the future. What do you see down the road? You're still fairly young into this, even though you've been doing it for a while. So where's the farm headed for the future?
Well, like any farm, I think we want to try to increase acres and do it at a profitable scenario. We don't want to just farm. I don't want to just farm to say I farm more acres. I want to do it and be profitable. But we try to do as much with technology as we can. We use soil moisture sensors. We have pump automation on all of our wells, so I can kind of control everything off my phone or at the office, or if it comes to rain at 2 a.m, I can shut everything off. So that's a huge blessing. Or if it's too far away and I don't want to drive, I can click my phone and it's a done deal. But we're looking, over the winter bought a drone. So we're going to see how that works out and how beneficial it is on our farm. I'm positive towards it. I know there may be some negativity, just, how efficient is it and how well is it going to work? I think with the technology today, I think they're finally to where they're cost effective. I think the future for that type of technology is going to increase, and I think there's going to be other uses. But I would say, as a broad for the future, I like the tech. I like to see what's kind of going on and new. I'm excited as a whole. But
With that drone, using it for spot spraying, or what are you going to be using it mostly for?
so my main use with it is going to be like after a rain, if I don't get the rest of my cotton sprayed, or if I've got to do something, with insecticides or fungicide, that's where this drone's going to kick in and take place of maybe using a airplane, or, if I just need to get a bunch of acres covered, I've also got a ground rig that we use. So it's mainly we're using it as a supplemental tool, and somewhat as a cost savings.
You were recently announced as a winner there at the Top Producer Conference. I'm just interested in what you kind of set you apart. I know that perhaps you don't know the competition that was out there, but certainly there were things that they saw in you to give you that award here just a few months ago.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been very rewarding. We just try every day to be a little better than the day before, and, just do right, treat others how we want to be treated. And, we just try to be effective with our time, and be efficient, and, do what's best for the land, and, hopefully we're rewarded at the end.
Your outlook on this year, we never know what the weather may bring us. We are in those times of tighter margins, as we have mentioned. So what's your outlook, and then looking to do anything different this year in the operation?
Well, we're going to have a few more acres of corn. That seems like it's on paper the better scenario in a gloom year. But you know, I I'm excited for the future. I'm excited for the year. I think it's going to kind of be one of those. We hope that we can get through, and obviously every year we enjoy to farm, because that's a lifestyle we're in. But I think it's. I hope that we're. I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a break even year. I want to be, upbeat about it, but I'm hope that that's where we're in the same boat we are this year come next year.
Has the cotton continued to remain an important part of what you're doing, and can you maintain the margins on it as well?
Yeah, it's very, very lean. We used to be majorly a cotton farm. At one point, I think we had almost 5,000 acres of cotton. We're down to about 1,500, just year over year. We used to have a fairly large stake in a cotton gin that we don't anymore. So we don't necessarily have to feed a gin. So that's kind of been just a step back in our cotton uh, farming scenario.
Dalton, I've enjoyed the time to visit with you, and hope that you have a good season. You've endured some rough weather, so maybe things will even out now.
Well, I hope so. I hope so. Hopefully, we'll catch some dry weather, and can get back in the field pretty soon.